Welcome, Daniel Prince.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, we got the slides.
Clicker left, right.
Excellent. Left and right. Okay. I'll just wait for everybody to make a quick transition. So for the English speakers, there's going to be Bulgarian panels going on in the other room. So for those that want to go and watch the Bulgarian panels now, that's perfectly fine. The less people in here, the less nervous I'll probably be. This is my first ever slideshow presentation. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Plamen and the rest of the team that have put this together. A quick anecdotal story. I just run into Alan Farrington. Who knows who Alan Farrington is in the room? Yeah, well, he's sitting out there shitting himself nervous because he didn't realize this was going to be as professional and as big and as profound that this is. So he's out there, you know, jigging around with his slides, trying to make sure that everything is good. Right, so yeah, Usury, your bank, and you. Let's see if I can get this clicker working here. Other way. Okay, so who am I? Daniel Prince. I'm the host of the Once Bitten podcast and the author of Choose Life, which Plamen, I hope the books have arrived. If they have, then I'll be signing some books. So who's heard of the Once Bitten podcast? Okay, thank you. Who's been on the Once Bitten podcast? There's a Bulgarian guy here. He came on about 3.5, 4 years ago, I think. Crypto Addict on Twitter. So if go and find him. He's got a really interesting story about homeschooling, world schooling. That's how we met on the road with our families in Spain on a beach, and we just talked about Bitcoin the whole time. And I invited him to come on the show. So it's nice to know that there's a good, healthy mix of plebs and big names on the Once Bitten podcast. So please go and check that out. So Usury, your bank, and you. Why did I start writing? I wrote an article about this, and it was published by Consensus Network. Now the slides are heavy text. One, to help me with my nerves, and two, because I know not everybody here is native English speaker. So there is a lot of text up here to help you along with the presentation. So what is usury? Well, it's the practice of lending money and charging the borrower interest, especially at an exorbitant or illegally high rate. It is derived from the Latin word usura. The practice of usury has been discussed amongst philosophers, economists, and religions for thousands of years. We can go back to Aristotle, who discussed usura in his book Politic in the year 350 BC, where he outlined 3 ways to make money. Number 1, knowledge of livestock. Which are the most profitable and where? What sort of horses, sheep, oxen, any other animals are most likely to make a return? A man, back in those days, if he wanted to make money, he ought to know which of these pay better than others and which pay best in particular places. Where do you need the animals? Where do you move them? Where do you house them? What kind of shelter? What kind of protection? This was critical first point on how to make money back in the days of Aristotle. Number 2, service for hire. Basic. Plumber, baker, candlestick maker, shoemaker, arts, other unskilled and bodily labor, hard labor, whatever that you can do to add value to your economy and charge somebody money to make money for yourself, to look after your family, and feed and shelter them. The third, usury, the most hated sort, and with the greatest reason, is usury, which makes a gain out of money itself and not from the natural object of it. Money was intended to be used in exchange, but not to earn interest. And this term interest, which means the birth of money from money, is applied to the breeding of money because the offspring resembles the parent. Therefore, of all the modes of getting wealth, this is the most unnatural. He wasn't holding back, Aristotle, when he was talking about usury and interest. And he was a philosopher. So as we can see throughout the centuries, we can find many more documented thoughts and beliefs about the practice of usury in society, especially in religious texts. So I got to looking around, just doing basic Google searches. I wanted to find what religions looked at usury and how they looked at usury. And probably not to your surprise, I found a fair amount. And I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. So Exodus 22:25. If you lend money to any of my people, with you who is poor, you shall not be like a moneylender to him, and you shall not exact interest from him. So this would be Christian religion. Again, I believe Christian. You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest. In Islam, riba, and I know Alan's written about this. I think he had an article, Money is Halal. In Islam, riba is explained as an exploitative means of increasing one's wealth. This is because a person with surplus money lends it to someone in desperate need of it. Now we have Muslim religion. O you who have believed, fear Allah and give up what remains due to you of interest. What they're saying is, give up your interest. Do not keep charging interest on anything that you've loaned to anybody. Buddhism also takes a dim view. This is from Siddhartha Gautama. One discerns wrong livelihood as wrong livelihood and right livelihood as right livelihood. And what is wrong livelihood? Scheming, persuading, hinting, belittling, and charging interest. This is wrong livelihood. Anyone getting triggered right now? A little bit? How many people here have a mortgage? How many people have a loan on a car? How many people have a loan on anything that you're being charged interest on? Okay. How do we live in a world where usury is used in society every second of every day, and how was that system captured and shaped? The study of money has become many a Bitcoin pleb's favorite pastime, but there's a book out there that I don't think many people have read. In fact, there are two. I forgot to put one in. The Secrets of the Federal Reserve. The Secrets of the Federal Reserve. Make note of it. Many people have read The Creature from Jekyll Island, but The Secrets of the Federal Reserve was written in 1948 by Eustace Mullins, and he does a much more thorough job about how the Federal Reserve System came to be in the United States. So, the book I'm referencing here for the rest of this slideshow is called Red Symphony by Jay Landowski. It's not a book. And this was the thing that gave me goosebumps when I read this. It's a transcript. It's a transcript of a conversation that took place on the 26th of January, 1938, between Gavril Kuzmin and Christian Rakovsky. Who are these guys? Nobody's ever heard of them. Kuzmin was Stalin's top NVKD agent and key interrogator. This interrogation was going on during the show trials. Rakovsky was a Trotskyite. He was pulled in to be interrogated. He'd been the Russian ambassador to France and was to be executed the next day unless he could disclose information to his interrogator that would be of use to Stalin. These torture sessions were horrific. This is actually, the transcript is a chapter in a much bigger book. I've not read the bigger book, I've just read this one. And it is thin and it is encapsulating. You can't stop reading it. Landowski was in charge of keeping Rakovsky talking by pouring just the right amount of red wine as they sat by an open fire. Now, Landowski was kidnapped himself by the NKVD because of his knowledge of biochemistry. So in other torture sessions, he had seen the most horrific things, and he was made to do the most horrific things for fear of his own life. In this setting, luckily for Landowski, all he had to do was keep pouring just the right amount of red wine into Rakovsky's glass to keep him talking. They'd set it up next to an open fire, and Rakovsky and Kuzmin are very highly intelligent. When you read the book, you can just tell it oozes intelligence, their conversation. The conversation took place in French. and Landowski had to translate the conversation into Russian for Stalin. And he was secretly keeping lots of notes, and he kept a complete copy of this conversation. The way we know this knowledge now is because Landowski ultimately died in a gulag, and a Spanish soldier found his body, and he found this transcript around his body, and he got that, and he kept it, and he got it to a translator, an author in Spain, who then translated it into many different languages. So the conversation starts, and these are the ones I had to pick lines that were most pertinent to this conversation. I only want to decipher the basic axiom. Money is power. Money is today the center of global gravity. This is what Rakovsky was trying to explain to Kuzmin, the interrogator. It is clear that in your imagination, there immediately appeared pictures of real money, of metal and paper, but that is not so. So when Rakovsky was explaining to him, Kuzmin, he couldn't picture exactly what money is, but Rakovsky knew. He knew how the system had been set up. They created credit money. Who are they? Who are they? They created credit money with a view to making its volume close to infinite. Sound familiar? And to give it the speed of sound. It is an abstraction, a being of thought, a figure, number, credit. Banks, the stock exchanges, the whole world financial system is a gigantic machine for the purpose of bringing about unnatural scandals, and according to Aristotle's expression, to force money to produce money. So Rakovsky was looking back at Aristotle. That is something that, if it is a crime in economics, then in relations to finances, it is a crime against the criminal code, since it is usury. There's that word again. So Rakovsky is trying to explain to his interrogator, to save his life, because he knows this information is going to get back to Stalin, he's trying to give him on a plate how the monetary system has been set up. And Stalin doesn't know this. Nobody knows this. This was the biggest secret. And when you read the book, it goes back to the French Revolution, whereby people of France thought that they had stolen the power and the king's heads and whatever else, and now we're in charge. Whereas behind the scenes, there were people who had stolen the real power, the power of money, the power of being able to print money and control money. Bearing in mind that lawful interest is fixed not on real capital, but on non-existing capital, the interest is illegal by so many times as the fictional capital is greater than the real one. What's he talking about? He's talking about the printed money that gets printed into the system and then has interest charged upon it. Sound familiar? Yes. Imagine to yourself, this is still Rakovsky, imagine to yourself, if you can, a small number of people having unlimited power through the possession of real wealth, and you will see that they are the absolute dictators of stock exchange, and as a result of this, also the dictators of production and distribution, and also of work and consumption. If you have the power of the money printer, you have everything at your fingertips. If you have the imagination, then multiply this by the global factor. And it's difficult to multiply that by the global factor. Like I said before, many people are pushed into getting mortgages for their homes, just basic shelter, which should be a consumption good, not a capital good. Many people are pushed into or tricked into, to keep up with the Joneses, a new car, a new couch, new television, new washing machine. Keep that in mind. Rakovsky was trying to hammer home the point that it's the monopoly in money creation and the related coercion and deception that is not just criminal and unethical, but also where the rot begins to creep into and shape society. The current financial system works against us to perpetually inflate the amount of money in the system, constantly debasing the purchasing power of our hard-earned money. Hard facts to swallow. And that's why many of us are already down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and opting out of this system and opting for the parallel system, the system of Bitcoin, the complete opposite to this. So now let's walk through an everyday example that many people here can probably connect with. Taking out a mortgage for a home. The first thing to understand is that the current cost of buying a house is exorbitant, which is a direct consequence of the trap set by those that Rakowski has described. Real estate markets around the world are a joke. Inflated prices due to the money printing of the central bank of your choice wherever you live. The house is not going up in value. Your money is losing purchasing power. Whatever currency that is, it's losing purchasing power. Real estate should not be a store of value. It's nonsense. To earn the right to take out a mortgage, you must first make a deposit. This deposit is usually a large sum of money, representing many years of the time and energy you expended to acquire it. In many cases, this could be somebody's life savings at that point. Maybe you're 27, 28, 30 years of age. You've been working 5, 6 years. After your degree, you're paying off your student debt. You've saved enough, just enough, working overtime, side hustles, to get 50,000 euros, pounds, yen, whatever it is, currency of your choice, doesn't matter. It's a large amount. It represents your life savings up until that point. But it can't buy you a home. It can buy you a foot in the bank to say, hey, I've got 50,000 euro. Can I borrow the other 250,000? The bank only has to keep a fraction of every dollar it gets, generally anywhere between 0 and 10%, depending on where you live and the current policy of that central bank. In the US, it's currently 0. 0! This is from the Fed, from their website. Reserve requirements, as announced on March 15th, 2020, the board reduced reserve requirement ratios to 0% effective March 26, 2020. This action eliminated reserve requirements for all depository institutions. But you have to give over your hard-earned money that you've spent time and energy getting to not even buy a house. The next part of this process is still very difficult to come to terms with, but as pointed out by Rune Osgaard in his book Fraud Coin, which I suggest all of you read, it's an excellent book about inflation. Banks do not use depositors' money to issue loans. Banks do not use depositors' money to issue loans. That cannot be stressed enough. How do we know this? Because the Bank of England said the quiet thing out loud. That's how we know this. Money creation in the modern economy. This is a report from the Bank of England. It's written by Michael McClay, Amar Radia, Ryland Thomas of the Bank's Monetary Analysis Directorate. 3 mega brains in the Bank of England about to tell us how the economy actually works. One common misconception is that banks act simply as intermediaries, lending out the deposits that savers place with them. That's a misconception. If you think your bank is loaning you money from other people's deposits, forget it. Take that idea off the table. That's not happening. Indeed, viewing banks simply as intermediaries ignores the fact that in reality, in the modern economy, commercial banks are the creators of deposit money. Commercial banks are the creators of deposit money. This article explains how, rather than banks lending out deposits that are placed with them, the act of lending creates deposits. The act of lending creates deposits. The reverse of the sequence typically described in textbooks. The Bank of England are telling you what you're told for your degree in economics is bullshit. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I forgot. I told you I had gifts. It is one of those moments. They said the quiet part out loud. This results in what is termed the multiplier effect, which means that the initial deposit can result in much larger amounts of money in circulation within the banking system. As more loans are taken out by the individuals, residential properties rise in price as a result of the increased money supply, as we were talking about earlier. It's this flooding of the money in. When you are going in with your hard-earned money, you are green-lighting the bank to inflate the monetary supply. Apply this on a grand scale, as Rutkowski begged Kuzmin to imagine. Global scale. Realize that this is happening every minute of every day, not just with property, but for many other reasons that individuals may apply for bank loans. Would this behavior drive price inflation? We think so. Thank you, Christine. Mainstream economic teaching still pushes the basic belief that inflation occurs when the aggregate quantity of goods demanded at any particular price level rises more quickly than the aggregate quantity of goods supplied at that price level. That's classic textbook economics theory, Keynesian theory right there. Yeah, I did find some good gifts. Now, with our newfound knowledge of how the banks deposit the loan into your bank account, let's get back to the example of mortgage and usury. Your deposit has been made. The bank loans you the rest of the money by creating a deposit in your bank for the transaction of the house purchase. This loan is what they will charge you interest on. This is usury in the purest form. Let's revisit what Rutkowski repealed, bearing in mind that lawful interest is fixed not on real capital but on non-existing capital. The interest is illegal by so many times as the fictional capital is greater than the real one. They are charging us interest on money that never existed. It doesn't matter if you've entered into a deal at 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, 4%. If you think you're signing off on a good deal, you're not. That money never existed. They're charging you interest on it. It's usurious and it's criminal. The bank counterfeits money, charges you interest. Now, at this point, you might be getting pretty angry. How have we been tricked into participating in this scheme? Somebody went up against this. It's known as the Credit River case. Happened in 1968. Defendant was Jerome Daley. The bank was trying to take his property back because he'd fallen behind payments. Daley was a trained lawyer. He represented himself and based his defense on the argument that the bank had not actually loaned him any money, but had simply created credit on its books. This was 1968. He argued that the bank had not given him anything of value and accordingly was not entitled to the property that secured the loan. The jury and the Justice of the Peace, Martin Mahoney, agreed with his argument. They returned a verdict for the defendant, and the Justice of the Peace found that the mortgage null and void. The decision meant that Daley did not have to pay the mortgage, debt, nor relinquish the property to the bank. There is him celebrating in the courtroom. He wrote in the local news article, "This decision, which is legally sound, has the effect of declaring all private mortgages on real and personal property and all US and state bonds held by the Fed, national and state banks to be null and void. This amounts to the emancipation of this nation from personal, national, and state debt purportedly owed to this banking system. Every American owes it to himself to study this decision very carefully, for upon it hangs the question of freedom or slavery." Freedom or slavery. The bank appealed. Decision was nullified on the grounds that as Justice of Peace, Martin Mahoney lacked the authority to enter into such a ruling. Technicality. The district court agreed, meaning that Daley had to pay the mortgage or relinquish the property. They're fucking laughing at us every single second of every day. It's a mockery. Daley was disbarred and banned from ever practicing law again. And adding to the mystery, Justice of the Peace Mahoney was found dead on 22nd of August, 1969. The circumstances surrounding his death remain unresolved. Apparently, he went on a fishing trip alone, got drunk, and fell overboard. This is all in this book, if you want to check that case. Behind the Curtain by John Hamer. The whole story is there for anybody to see. So what can you do to protect yourself against usury in the financial system? What's the solution? You opt out. Walk away. Why would you sit there being perpetually beaten by the rulers who changed the rules to benefit themselves? The old guys laughing in suits. Under this regime, which is the same in almost all countries, we stand no chance of true prosperity or ethical distribution of wealth. Entrepreneurs, savers, consumers are left without any apparent signal, no real idea of value, no guiding star. We have yet to learn what a truly civilized world could look like because the monetary system is civilization's foundation and the legal system is just a layer on top of that. So if the foundation is broken, everything else above it is broken. To ensure prosperity, we must design a completely different form of money that stores value rather than loses value over time. A monetary system beyond the control of any centralized power. Any ideas? A means of exchange that runs on an open, easily verified economic system. We need money that is global, available to anyone of any age, from any race or religion, without permission. A store of value that becomes increasingly scarce and desirable over time. An instrument that is difficult to confiscate or steal. Embedded in this new system is a money that could be sent digitally in a matter of seconds to cater for the needs of people living in a modern, interconnected, and highly interdependent civilization. Thankfully, this money has been available to us since the 3rd of January 2009. It works, protecting millions of people and their families around the world. The money is Bitcoin. Bitcoin fixes this. Thank you very much.